I remember when I was very young, I used to travel quite far to get to an actual setter, and the time it took, it just wasn't making any sense. And he used to look at this work and tell me, but why don't you do this yourself? It was something that I needed to do that I couldn't do, and it triggered my curiosity. And I'd like to share with you what I've learned, where I feel very comfortable with setting just about anything from tanzanites to emeralds. There's nothing like being completely involved in your work from start to finish. Welcome back to the studio. Thank you very much for clicking the link. My name is Yaku. Behind the camera, as always, is Damaya. We bring you these videos. We take a little piece of our lives once a week. We take something and we share it with you online in the interest of the trade, hoping that you'll learn something from it. The style of setting I'm going to be doing today is basically where you see the strip of diamonds by themselves. If you're looking at the ring from the top, you're just going to see the little glitter. What I'm going to try and do is eliminate the material, as we always do with set work, to make sure that the diamonds take the prominent stage. So when you're looking at the ring, it's really just like a bunch of sparkles. I'm going to start with taking the size of the diamond themselves. These are just over 1 point. It's about 1.25 millimeters in diameter. I want to go slightly wider on the band itself. So if I'm talking about 1.25 millimeters, I might be going up to 1.5 or 1.6 millimeters as a starting point for my band. Even though you just see the stones from the top, visually they're going to look like they're exactly the same size, but technically if you put the ring next to another ring, they're not going to be rubbing against the other ring. This is what I'm trying to achieve. Once I've created the little ring and I know where the soldering mark is down at the bottom, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go on the opposite side. I'm going to get the middle point, because I don't want the diamonds to be set anywhere close to my soldering point. If somebody wants to buy this ring and their finger size is any different and there needs to be a sizing, you don't want the sizing to be anywhere where the stones are set. I'm using that as a starting point from the center outwards. It's just good practice. Once I've prepared the ring and I've got my little mark on the other side, I'm going to find a halfway mark. Once I've got the halfway mark, we're going to have to start marking where we want the stones to be seated. I take the stone, lie it flat down on its face, bring a divider in, close the divider up to the point where it actually pinches the stone, and then go slightly bigger than that, just a little fraction. So that way I know that I've got the diameter of the stone covered plus a little extra, meaning that if I make my little marks from here to there, and I'm working in between this little section, that if I sink that hole in perfectly in the middle, these two ends are still bigger than the stone. That little fraction that I'm leaving over there is so close, but at the same time make sure that the stones don't touch. If stones touch and you've got any movement on the ring, they tend to break each other. I start with a small ball phrase to get the center point, and then after the small ball phrase, I'm using a draw, dropping it ever so slightly lower than the actual ball phrase area, and that's really just to create a little bit of a guide, so that when I come with the next ball phrase, I've got something certain to go into.
It's like the thing that's anchoring, making sure that everything's stable and well spaced.
Yes, in this case I'm also keeping it solid. I don't want to go all the way through, I'm looking for the structure to be strong. Now I'm moving over to a slightly bigger ball phrase. Again, I'm not jumping straight to the top one. I can get it perfect by going slow and making sure that I ever so slightly space it up the whole time. Also, once I'm done with the ball phrase, it's going to create a little bit of burr, and to make sure that you've got that symmetry right, take a little emery stick, run over there, make sure that you've cleaned up the whole time, so that the area that you're working in is always clean, so that your references are always there. You've got the half rounding of the ball phrase that you've sunken into this section, but a diamond has a little point, and I'm just sinking in a drill over there to accommodate that point of the diamond. You don't want to be putting the diamond down and it's floating around because it doesn't have enough depth. Yeah. So the idea is to seat the diamonds as tight as you possibly can. So for instance, this is the top of the section over here, and you get the diamond from here and you're pressing it down. You want the girdle to go lower, and you want the table at the top to be level with the setting over here, so that you've got a uniform height. Basically the same height as the table must be the same height as the metal that you're working with. It's a bigger ball phrase, another bigger ball phrase, a bigger ball phrase, and a bigger ball phrase until they get to the point where you're just about the right size of the stone. At this point, it's minimal, but you're still adjusting it. You know, looking at it, you might find that it's ever so slightly out. This is the point you're pulling it, and I'm dropping that ball phrase to a certain depth. That obviously it's a ball phrase, so you want to get halfway to the diameter. I go slightly lower than halfway. I've allowed the thickness of the ring be thicker than the actual stones. So if I drop that ball phrase in ever so slightly lower, I know that my table is going to be level with the claws at the end of the day. So I'm measuring the stones on top of it, and I'm seeing that this is pretty much where I want to be. Typically, I want it to be a fraction smaller than the actual stones, just a little bit. This type of setting is going to be exposed from the sides. So if you turn the ring to the side, the little scallops that I'm going to be making here needs to be exactly the same height. Otherwise, this, if you've got one lower than the other one, it's going to spoil the look. In symmetry, that happens, your eye catches the imperfections. So what we want to do is create a little line, which is roughly halfway in my case, halfway down the actual ring's surface from the top to the bottom, so that I can then take my parallel phrase and run it down to a point which is exactly the same height as the next one. And I'm dropping it down to that halfway mark. This symmetry creates that little pattern that these rings are so famous for, that part of it that makes it look so desirable, the fact that it's got some really fine jewelry work attached to it. The little section between the stones is still there. I'm bringing a little parallel phrase in, or sometimes I use a little ball phrase, and I'm breaking a line all the way through from the one side to the other side, turning the ring around and doing the same this direction. Now I'm dropping that down about as far as what my scallops are, maybe slightly higher. It just needs to be deep enough so that when I seat my stones, that it's lower than the girdle of the stone, so that we can create these little prongs. I just need the most basic strong claws to hold the stones, the rest of its decoration. I've taken halfway of this ring's flat surface on the side, and I've scalloped half of it. Now I'm taking the half that's remaining, I'm dividing that again, and now I'm coming at an angle so that the angle runs from this point over here, the halfway mark, up to the back part of where I've made the scallop. So essentially I'm not dropping the scallops, I'm respecting one little part at the end here, but I'm breaking that space between that final bit up to the halfway mark. It's decoration. It starts coming up at a V. It makes a sort of an emphasis point towards the stone itself, but on this size, because of the symmetry that we're following, it becomes a pattern. If you've done this with all the care that you possibly can, it makes the setting of the job fun. It's the easiest part of the job, and it's the most satisfying part of the whole thing as well. Bring a little lens phrase, or diamond burr in England, I think. I'm bringing it in an angle, avoiding the top, coming in underneath it, and cutting just here and on the opposite side. So I'm creating a little bit of a groove. That allows me to take the stone, place it in this direction first, and click it in, or push it in from the top and seat itself at a certain point. And I do 3 of these before I start the set work. So you're just cutting it ever so slightly onto the claws, and this will also show you, because you're cutting it, exactly how deep you want to seat the stone. It must go in tightly so that they're already kind of set before you distribute this material over it, which is what I'm going to do next. I'm using a flat graver, and I'm cautiously coming in from the sides of these single claws at the moment, pressing it down on the claw itself. Then I take it away and have a look at it, and if it's in the center, I'm happy. I go back on that line and press down on it. If it's not in the center, at this point I can move slightly sideways so that I've got an equal distribution of metal to share between those 2 stones. Push forward and upwards. So you're pushing this direction, so sideways, and then you're bringing it and you're pressing from the top down as well. I'm really only just pinching them, because now I know I have my symmetry between those claws. I don't have a tiny little claw on the side and a big chunk on that side. I'm perfectly in the middle. I'm splitting it up, I'm pinching the stones, I'm hugging them. I just need to get the stones in. Once the stones are seated, I come from the top, reinforce that, and then I also roll it over. I'm pushing it from the sides, I'm pushing it from the top, and I'm also pushing it downwards. So I'm really making sure that I'm getting the best use of a small piece of metal to hold both sides of the stones. So I'm splitting the claws essentially into 2 claws. Now that the stones are set and all of them are in their little position, I know that everything is as tight as they possibly can be. We have some distortion on the metal, so again I'm using a little bit of emery paper just to clean the sides up to show me exactly what I'm looking at. Again, I'm going to come in with a graver, this time a V-shaped graver. Right in the center of it, again, I've got some time. I'm looking between this side and that side. I'll move towards the top, create these little lines. If you're cutting in towards the metal, it creates a groove that creates a V shape. And I've already split the claws at the top, so it's got a V shape waiting for me. I hope that's meant something to you. I hope that this has demystified the concept. To be able to make the ring and to set it, as I said before, it's got twice as much of an impact. It doesn't have to leave the workshop. Practice these things. Start off with a little silver ring, practice it on a bigger scale. The concept is not going to differ from a piece of silver right through to platinum. Once you get comfortable with it, it becomes like a little pattern that you just follow, and it is really satisfying to be able to say to the customer that everything was done on the premises itself. If you liked this video, thank you very much.
Well, that's nice. That feels good, right?
Please press the button downstairs, the subscribe, the bell, and all the rest of it. But another thing is, if you like this ring, the one I've just made by hand and also showed you how to set this very same ring, if you do like it and you'd be interested in buying it, well, it's for sale. Send us a DM on Instagram or email us on yakuthejeweler@gmail.com. We will see you next week with another video. As per usual. Yeah, that's what we do. Anyway, cheers, bye.
Take it easy.